Alrighty, so today I'm going to be folding a brand new pattern, and this pattern I'm going to use a 80 division diagonal triangle grid on a hexagon. And first thing I need to do is find my crease pattern, because I did not get that open before I jumped on here. And okay, there we go. I'm going to be starting with an open hexagon twist. So first I need to find the center of this paper, and it is harder than usual because of all the divisions and the fact that it's a rotated grid. If it wasn't rotated, then I could use the corners to tell me where the center is. But as is, I need to fold my paper a couple times. And then the open hexagon is going to have its mountain folds one space away from the folds to the center. And this is not a tutorial, but if you already know how to fold basic twists and you're comfortable being like, oh, put in this twist at this distance away, then you could follow what I'm doing. And you don't have to use a grid this big. So I'm going to be folding along. The other thing I need to do is bring up where I can see the chat. So I can see if y'all have any questions or comments. And yeah, hi Erlu. I'm doing pretty well, staying very busy as Advent of Tess approaches. And how are you doing? Stick that there. Okay. So this pattern is kind of, I think of it as a variation on inchworm, which is a pattern that's in Advent of Tess 2024. And that pattern has a squiggle of 3 rhombus twists. This one also has the squiggle of 3 rhombus twists, but they're on the same side as the hexagon. And yeah, Erlu, I'm glad you're doing well. So the spacing for this, 3 spaces between valleys. So 1 spacing wider than tube pleat spacing. Get the first rhombus put in. And the first pleat overlap, and these guys are going to have triangles on the opposite side, closed triangles, which actually is the same twist that you would need if you wanted to have this rhombus in a position of twofold rotational symmetry. Fun fact. Maybe I'll include that version in next year's Advent of Tess. Who knows? But there is actually a pattern that has the open hexagon and then closed rhombus think it's on the same side in this year's Advent of Tess. I can double check that real quick. I already taught the I already recorded the tutorial video, so I should know this, but yeah. With tube plate spacing, that's very related to this year's Advent of Tess. But of course, this pattern will not be included as an alternate ending in the ebook because the ebook is already out and this pattern has never been folded. And all the patterns in the ebook have photos. So, there's always more patterns that I could have included in the ebook that I usually fold like immediately after I release the ebook. It's always a fine line of, do I delay the ebook to include this pattern? And the answer can't always be yes, because then I would never release it. But yeah, if you're watching this and you're not familiar with Advent of Tess, it's a series of 25 tutorial videos that I release daily from December 1st through 25th. And it's free to sign up. It's actually free to watch the videos even if you don't sign up. But when you sign up, you get a way to watch the videos ad-free. And you get crease patterns for the daily patterns, and you get, along with the crease pattern this year, there's tiling information, and you get email reminders for when all these things come out. So there's a lot of good things. You can sign up for Advent of Tess at training.gatheringfolds.com/advent. And I'm sure that link is also in the description of this video. But in, excuse me. In Advent of Tess, we're folding patterns that are around the scale of what I've already completed. And it starts with easier patterns and builds up to harder ones. Here I'm putting in, so back to the pattern commentary, I'm putting in closed triangle twists on all of these three-way intersections. Go ahead and do all 6 of them. And so for Advent of Tess, you start off with easier patterns that use all triangle twists, and you work up through hexagon twists, through rhombus twists. This year we're going into trapezoid twists, so that'll be fun. And we're doing a lot of patterns that are the same on both sides, called isoarea patterns, and patterns that have flagstone elements, so twists that are right up next to each other that don't share a pleat. Here on the free pleat of the triangle, I'm putting in another closed triangle right next to it, and a compound wrap on the pleat overlap. And then that compound wrap becomes one of the rhombus twists of the squiggle. And let's see, I came from here. Let's continue on this side. There's going to be a bunch of triangle twists. So I'll set up this triangle, which is the duplicate of the one from the first set of parallel pleats. That sets up a friendly pleat overlap that will turn into 2 more triangle twists. Yeah. I'm talking very authoritatively here, but I've never folded this pattern before. So I'm also checking the crease pattern a lot. There's going to be 7 triangle twists in this group, but not all in this ring around the center. Pretty sure that one's the symmetric one. And then rhombus, and I guess that is the top of the stairs for the triangles, so it makes sense to keep doing that. And the compound wrap. Yep. But yeah, mostly today, gonna just fold. And I'm happy to answer questions if anyone has a question for me. And with these triangles, we're hitting the end of this ring around the center. I need to figure out what comes next. I do know that there's another triangle here because that one is a position of threefold symmetry in the broader pattern. And so there's two triangles off of each side. It feeds into a compound wrap. And that compound wrap becomes the third rhombus of the squiggle. The middle rhombus of the squiggle is a position of twofold symmetry. And then that pleat goes to the hexagon, so this one goes to more triangles. New pleat. Start with this triangle and see if it makes a compound or a triangle wrap. And that is a compound wrap. So I will be able to fold that. Wait, that goes this way. I'll just leave it as an overlap because it seems happier that way. And remember to compound wrap the other side. That's, oh, it's two. Okay, got it. Two corners of rhombus twists. Yeah, like that. That's why I didn't recognize the overlap. So those will just lay down. And then I have my compound. And mostly I'm reorganizing this overlap to make it clearer what's coming next. So that the two rhombus twists can be separated more easily. That's what's going on right now. Mm. Mm-hmm. So the compound wraps, like the one that I'm about to put in right here, if the paper will let me, are going to be rhombus twists on the other side. And then the overlap here that I'll flip over and turn into those two three-way intersections is because in this ring around the center, in the corner of the ring, there's two halves of rhombus twists. So let me make that more concrete. So in this tiling, I had the ring around the center with the alternating rhombus and triangle twists. Then I had the ring with the one rhombus and three triangles per side. And now I'm in the next ring out, and I can get the triangle, rhombus, two triangles, but then in the corner of the ring, there's these two rhombus twists that are waiting. So functionally, I'm putting in two three-way intersections that are representing the three pleats of this triangle block, and then continuing around, setting that up all the way. And let's see, in the next ring around, I'll finish those rhombus twists, get these 2 triangle twists in the corner, and have a whole rhombus here and half of the hexagon. Yeah, that's pretty nice. Okay, back to folding. So I would say it's more like 2 triangle wraps or 2 three-way intersections, depending which side of the paper you're looking at it, than a compound wrap. And then the compound wrap turns into a rhombus. So this is basically the same setup with the 2 three-way intersections. Just the pleats coming out of it are oriented different ways. And at this area of the pattern, I need triangle twists, so I'm turning it immediately into triangle twists. Whereas the one on the other side is in an area of the pattern where I need rhombus twists, and so those pleats are not sufficient to get the whole rhombus, and I make it wait for later. Great. I'm glad that explanation made sense. And as I come around to the end of this ring around the center, I already have the triangle here. So I've got an overlap that'll turn into those 2 three-way intersections that are placeholders for rhombus twists on this side. And actually, now that we're all the way around, is it time to fold one of these into an actual rhombus? I think so. So now that second three-way intersection needs to either tuck under or lay on top of the squashed rhombus until we get the rest of the way around. So it was oriented that way, and now I'm letting things fall over so that the pleats are happy. But ooh, I'm gonna get whole squiggles this ring. That's neat. And if I want to, I'll let it be an overlap for now. That's feeding into the next hexagon twist, which will do a wrapping maneuver to hold us half a hexagon. And the third pleat is headed up in here to this rhombus. So let's see, I did see that I would need some triangle twists in this ring around the center. So I'm going to choose not to leave my half hexagons as set up trapezoids. Let's squash this rhombus first. I'm going to take this and push in the middle point. Make all of these three-way intersections and have an accordion pleat come out. And then we're back to where we started, but on the next set of parallel pleats. This time this rhombus is already done. So when we set up the new one, we don't need to tuck anything or worry about layers. The 80 divisions of grid is something that I determined from the crease pattern. And this particular grid was kind of hard to choose because the tiling that I showed does not have the repeats aligned with the tiling breaks. So if we look at the tiling, these repeats, so the tiling breaks are going this way, and these repeats are almost perpendicular to the tiling breaks. Almost, but not quite. So I chose this particular grid and rotation to get full squiggle, I think full squiggles and a border roughly aligned with the tiling breaks. We'll see how well that worked out. But my usual technique is to align to the repeats. But with this pattern, that would have required folding all the way to the edge in order to actually see the alignment, which is not what I wanted. Okay, and here I have that same 2 three-way intersections, and I call this an unfriendly overlap because kind of need to either tuck one bit under or over to squash the other instead of having it lay flat as a nice place to press. And that's the only triangles that we put in this round. But no, I would say the 80 divisions is not something that's easily recognizable. I had to count it out on the crease pattern that I drew. And then figuring out the rotation was also not particularly easy to recognize. And we'll probably have enough information to tell if the tiling breaks are lining up with the edge by the end of the hour. but it's not going to be done in 1 hour. So I'm setting up the 3 pleats going into that open hexagon twist as an open trapezoid. And then I can have 3-way intersections of mountains here, here, and here, and pop down the point in the middle and have a valley come across to make an accordion pleat. So all the valleys were on this side of the mountains. Now the valleys are on the opposite side to get it to lay down. It's a nifty trick. But this pattern has enough space that you could probably get away with leaving that 3D. So you're not squashing anything on the other side super close to it. But yeah, back to the choosing a grid. That's one of the big things that I try to emphasize with my crease patterns. Like, they may all be drawn on 64 grid divisions, but that is more of a matter of convenience and me drawing like over 700 of them. It is not a folding recommendation necessarily. There are a few things that are nice to fold on 64 divisions with an aligned grid, but definitely not everything. But yeah, I knew that this one would be particularly pretty, so I wanted more repeats. But I fold too many things to do test folds of each pattern. So I've developed quite a bit of awareness in how I look at the crease pattern to tell me what grid to use. Oh, and the other factor with what grid to use is what size of paper you have. So this paper started bigger than my normal hexagons with 7 inches per side, which would be 14 inches, around 35 centimeters from tip to opposite tip. This one measures 17 inches from tip to opposite tip. I think I was calculating recently, that's about 43 centimeters. And yeah, I'm also using Skytone here, which is a great paper for tessellations. And it is available in larger sizes from the manufacturer. At some point, I'll probably work out how I can send larger sizes to people, but I don't have that figured out yet. Of course, the best paper for any particular person to use is the one that you can find locally and in your budget. Like, don't let not being able to get Skytone stop you from folding tessellations. But I am able to do some really nice things with it, with some pretty teeny tiny grids. Oh, and this maneuver with turning the 3 pleats into an open hexagon into this wrap with the accordion pleat And that is in the advanced traps video that I did a month or so ago. So one other reason why this is a full piece instead of a demonstration instead of a tutorial video is because you can see it's taking me an hour to get 2 repeats of the center. At full folding speed. So this is not a simple pattern, to say the least. But it is very pretty. Huh, that's interesting. I'm getting a pretty exact hexagon outline here. We'll see if that survives putting in the next open hexagon twists. I think the outline will survive, but I don't know if it'll be obvious. Okay. Well, the good news is that these sets of parallel pleats really are lining up perpendicular to the grid lines, which is how I have the edge. So that's nice confirmation. And that'll wiggle a bit, but it also means I can go either direction on the set of parallel pleats. And I think I want to start with this hexagon. So this is the opposite direction that I've been working. Yeah. Taunt is a really good choice for like what's available on Origami Shop. There's also really large sheets of marble paper that work well for tessellations. It's not a flat color, but it does work really nicely. And like the French marble paper. And it folds really well for tessellations, and it comes in super large sheets. That one that I just showed on screen was folded in quarters. So you could get a bunch of moderate size hexagons out of that sheet. It's pricey, but so is Taunt. And gotta remember my spacing. Here, I'm gonna have a rhombus twist, but not yet, because the pleats coming in are only enough to define a triangle. So I'll leave that as a three-way intersection and do a triangle wrap down below. Yeah, and I think last I checked, there was still stock of French marble on Origami Shop. So that should be good. There's also a pergament paper that you can get online, sometimes in grocery stores, I think, that works really well for tessellations too. It's white. So there's a couple options. Okay, here I have that unfriendly overlap becoming two triangles, but I also have another triangle next to it that I can fold in half without adding a new crease. And here I have two pleats before the hexagon. Start with the one here. That's going to be my center of the triangle cluster. And it's going to cause all kinds of pleat overlaps, but they're all on pleats in the direction I'm heading towards, not in the direction of pleats that I already worked on. So these overlaps are fine. And then I'm going to go ahead and set up this hexagon. So I'm going to get another pleat headed into it anyways. That has the rhombus further out. And this extra pleat from the triangle is making a three-way intersection that'll turn into the next rhombus. So the next rhombus out in the next ring. So we have two three-way intersections of rhombi on each side, or three-way intersections that are waiting to become rhombi. That next overlap is resolved with three-way intersection above, triangle wrap below. And the wrap turns into a triangle. And then unfriendly overlap. So the unfriendly overlap would be a decent argument for working the other way around the paper, because at least in theory then the overlap would be friendly. But you'd have a mess at the hexagon. So I'll stick with what I've been doing. Oh, nice. Okay, I can see the great big hexagon effect is staying even with these next hexagon twists in place. You can start seeing the corners coming in to the middle as well. Overlapping great big hexagons. Was not anticipating that for this pattern. And it's always a possibility when you use this symmetry, but the alignment is really awesome. One of the things with pleat overlaps is that you start a set of parallel pleats with no overlaps. I mean, you might have wraps, but you have no overlaps across all of them. And then you put in a pleat from one side of the set of parallel pleats that overlaps with the rest. Makes a whole bunch of overlaps. And this pleat will gradually pass further and further down until it becomes a pleat in this set of parallel pleats with no overlaps. So here it's taking a big jump over. I'm also putting in 2 twists at a time, which helps with the big jump. And then these 3 pleats up above the crossing pleat are free from overlaps. And you're overlapping with all the pleats below. And then you free up another pleat and move the crossing pleat down further. Add in twists. Resolve overlaps. The pleat moves once again. And now there's no overlaps. Then you start the cycle over again. It took me many years to get to the point of seeing that stage. Welcome, Zach. Good morning. Yeah. So I think I'm gonna call it a day. At least call it a video. There. Gotten most of the way around this next ring around the center. And I have a long way to go. There's a lot of grid left. I would say I'm less than halfway through. So the grid in the center, you can get many multiples of that grid around the edge. Granted, I'm not folding all the way to the edge because I do want to keep my perfect hexagonal outline, but you get the picture. There's all of these twists, and the pattern is making these squiggles between hexagons, and I kind of knew that the squiggles would line up between the hexagons, which is part of why I called it Web of Life. And let's check out the backlighting. Yeah, because usually after every tiling break, I hold it up to the light. Yeah, those rhombi around the hexagon look really circular. Interesting. In the backlighting, the squiggles don't stand out so much. It's more just connections between the circles of rhombi around the hexagon. Interesting. So yet another pattern with very different looks on the front and the back. Actually, very different looks with and without backlighting. So those great big hexagons that I was seeing without the light turn out to be, seems harder to see with the light. So great big hexagon here. And yeah, there's just enough going on that gets lost with the backlighting. Interesting. So yeah, that's what's going on. It uses all basic twists. And I'm sure I'll post photos to my Instagram stories with the next stages of how it's being folded. So happy folding, everyone. Thanks for joining me. And see you next week, where I'll be demonstrating all of the twists that are used in Advent of Tess this year. So there are 14 different twists. 2 of those are double depth versions of single depth twists that are also used. And another is, so we've got the friendly and the unfriendly mixed depth rhombus. So you can reduce your grids if you want to, down to 11 grids needed. If you use the same, same grid for a couple of the twists. But yeah, that's what's going on next week. Most of the grids are going to be 8 divisions. Some of them are going to be up to 16. I happened to have a grid with 12 divisions sitting around, so I'll use that as well. But yeah, happy folding, everyone, and see you next week.